Hey listeners, while we're in between Season 1 and Season 2, we will be sharing a few episodes from other podcasts that we love that I joined as a guest. This one is with Chef Eli Kulp on his show, the Chef Radio podcast, a really great show. Eli was also a guest on the Meez podcast earlier this year, and it's been really awesome to get to know him over the past year, both as guests on each other's shows and just generally over calls catching up. And speaking of guests, if there's anyone that you'd love to hear on the Meez podcast in the future, or just topics that you'd like to hear more about, shoot me a DM on LinkedIn or Instagram. Anyways, thanks so much, and as always, enjoy the show.
Who you work for matters. It matters for a lot of reasons. It matters because the ones who teach you early on in your career will have a lasting impact on how your career will go. If you work for dirty chefs, you'll probably become a dirty chef. It's just a fact. If you work for chefs who have high standards, meticulous eye for details, and are great leaders, then you'll probably have some of that in you. Just like children, cooks are a product of their environment. And it's hard to have a certain standard if you've never worked in that standard. Sure, this is a blanket statement, and there are plenty of examples of students who have ascended beyond their teachers, but in general, this statement really sticks. But there are some other reasons. One of which is, if you have high-achieving chefs on your resume, then it's more likely that it's going to open doors for you as you progress through your career than if you have a resume full of mediocre chefs and restaurants that no one's ever heard about. It's also more likely to get people to trust you quicker once you have your own restaurant because they see the respectable chefs and restaurants that you've worked for. Whether it's your future staff or your future customers, if you have recognizable, well-respected chefs and restaurants on your resume, it's more likely that you're going to be successful in hiring high-quality employees and getting excited customers in your seats. Our guest today, Josh Sharkey, worked for some incredible generational talent, the likes of David Bouley, Indian superstar chef Floyd Cardoz, and the Great Gray Kunz. And he built up his repertoire and his resume, so no matter what he did, he would be successful at it. But after working for these industry titans, he found himself on a new mission. It was after he'd lost an important notebook that was chock full of recipes and techniques that had been taught over the years that he came up with the idea of developing software where no recipe, no technique, or no learned knowledge will ever go missing again because somebody loses their notebook. In fact, it was that experience of losing his notebook, full of information that he worked so hard to attain, that made him really motivated to create the world's best platform for chefs and restaurants, which he calls Meez. And if you listen to the podcast the last few episodes, you've probably come across the ad spot for Meez, which was created by Josh, who after years of R&D has come up with an incredibly important tool that any cook or chef should have in their back pocket. And what you're going to hear today is a story of going from an unlikely cook to being a chef in some of the world's best kitchens, and why he felt it was so important to develop this incredibly powerful tool. So hang tight. We have a great episode for you today, chock full of storytelling and all sorts of fun little tidbits that you're not going to want to miss. Okay, everybody, welcome back to the Chef Radio Podcast, America's #1 chef-driven podcast. If you've joined us before, welcome back to Chef Radio. And if it's your first time, welcome to the family. I really appreciate that you've decided to spend some time with us today. Chef Radio is a podcast that's built for culinary professionals just like you, who are working hard to one day leave your mark on our amazing industry and who crave insight into the minds of leading chefs. I'm Eli Kulp, co-founder of High Street Hospitality Group based in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I've had the privilege of working in this incredible industry for a long time now. I wouldn't change it for a thing. Because what this industry can give you, if you work hard and push yourself to constantly improve by learning and listening, is a fulfillment that few careers can give you. And maybe you're listening to this while you're picking a couple quarts of parsley, or maybe you're sharpening your knives. I hope that each time you listen to one of these journeys, you become more knowledgeable, more thoughtful, and a better leader than you were before you pressed the play button. All right, so now's the time. Let's get into it. Without further ado, meet Josh Sharkey, founder of Meez. Josh, it's great to have you on the show. Welcome to Chef Radio. How are you today?
Good to be here, Eli.
Yeah, I see you've got a nice brick background there. Looks like you're outside maybe on this joyous day.
Well, it is beautiful. My lilac tree just started blooming, but I'm
Hmm.
actually inside. This is
Okay.
this stone wall because my house was built in the 30s, and we live
Nice.
kind of in the forest, and so one part of my house is all this stone.
Oh, really
Um,
cool. Well, the
yeah,
light that's hitting it right now looks like you're outside, so you have some good light
good. Yeah,
streaming
there's
through.
a big
So,
window to my left. So
yeah, very cool, very cool. So, how are you today? What's going on?
I'm doing great, man. Yeah, had a good morning, a good run. My kids got to school on time. They were
Nice,
happy, so
nice,
good
nice,
start to a
nice.
day.
So, Josh, you're someone who started off with all the ambitions of being a chef. You worked in some really fantastic restaurants. You went to Johnson Wales right out of high school. Talk about those early days of food and what it meant to you and why you decided to get into it.
Yeah, well, I guess we went way back. My father passed away when I was 16, and
Hmm.
I
Sorry
primarily
about that.
was well, thank you. I was a wrestler in high school and actually in college as well. But I thought that's what I would go to college for. But after my
Okay.
father passed away, I started cooking for the family because my mom worked nights, and so I ended up making dinner many nights at home and really enjoyed it. And then just randomly entered this contest from a culinary school that I didn't know of called Johnson Wales. I grew up in Northern Virginia, and somehow I like won the contest. I don't know how,
Okay.
but I actually still remember what it was like a red pepper sorbet with tuna,
Oh,
with
wow.
like
Okay.
a tuna sashimi something, and
You're
I'm
avant-garde,
well,
right
in
out of the
retrospect, I'm
gate.
like, I don't even know where I probably never ate that once as a
Right,
16-year-old
right.
kid in Virginia, but somehow that's what I made. And so, anyways, I went to culinary school at Johnson Wales, then started cooking. I didn't really get into like the real sort of like profession of it until a little bit a year or so after. I went to Nantucket there for a while, and then I ended up entering another contest inadvertently. A buddy of mine was like, "Hey, you should do this." I don't even remember why or how I did it, but it turned out it was a bigger contest than I thought. It was with the Norwegian Seafood Export Council, and
Okay.
I entered that and had come up with a recipe with Norwegian salmon. I submitted it. Turns out it was like it was all of the U.S. and South America, and I won. They flew me to New York for the finals. The judges were Eric Ripert, Marcus Samuelson, Rick Moonen,
Oh,
and
wow.
um,
Okay.
and Rocco DeSpirito. Luckily, I had no idea who they were at the time. I was like
Yeah,
19. This
yeah.
was like
Right.
2000, and I wasn't I wasn't as nervous as I should have been.
Uh-huh.
And I won that.
Ignorance is
So
bliss, right?
yeah, so I got to travel through Norway with those chefs and this guy John Mariani, who's a food writer, and some
Did you
folks
really? Wow.
from the Norwegian Seafood Export Council and this company called the Food Group. During that time, I cooked at some restaurants there. One of which was this restaurant called Oro, which was this chef named Terje Ness who had just won the Bocuse d'Or the year before in '99, and I was fucking blown away. I was like, oh my god,
Wow.
this is it. Like everything came in every day. We were like taking shallots off of the root and cleaning those and like
Mm-hmm.
confing. Like
Mm-hmm.
everything was just like new. And I remember so much of it still 20 some odd
Sure.
years later. And I was like, this is what I want to do with my life. And I stayed and I kept cooking there, I mean, the drill was 16-hour days, but like never felt
Sure.
like it. It was just awesome. And so I came back and ended up
How
moving to New
long were you
York.
there for? How long were you there for?
I think like, I don't remember how many, it was months, it wasn't years or anything.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then I luckily, like I was able to, take a job with one of those restaurants. I ended up picking
Mm-hmm.
Oceana over Le Bernardin. I don't remember why, but I did, and I really I loved working, at Oceana so much. Learned so much there
Sure. Yeah.
with Chef Rick Moonen.
Yeah. We both
Was
we
there?
both worked there. You worked
That's
there a couple
right.
of years before me,
That's right.
and then I came on a little bit like 2004. I came on.
Yeah, I left in 2002, just as Neil was Neil.
Right.
No,
Right. Right. Neil
Neil
Cornelius
Gallagher.
Gallagher. Yep.
Yeah, just as he was coming on, like Rick left, and then this guy Michael Shank was there for stepped up for a little bit, and then Neil came on, and I left right after Neil came because originally I was going to start working at John George, and I did,
Okay.
but then I got this job in Italy, and I felt terrible. Like,
Oh, really?
Brandon, please don't hate me for. I'm sure he doesn't remember, but like, I started working there, and then a couple weeks in, I was like, "Look, man, I gotta go to Italy. I got this opportunity. I can't turn it down." And I ended up going to Italy, so left that, and then came back.
Where in Italy were you?
in Piedmont, and then I traveled around a little bit after that,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
sort of had this like love affair with Sherry, and so ended up going after there to
Nice. Nice.
San Luca de Barrameda and then all around the Jerez area, and then eventually came back and was introduced to Floyd Cardoz at Tabla, started working there.
Well, hold on. Let's go
Um,
back to Italy real quick. How long were you there for?
Again, just a few months. It wasn't
Okay.
like years.
Were you
or
at a
anything.
specific restaurant?
One in particular called Financier, and
Okay.
that was actually the dish. There's like this really cool dish there that
Okay.
they make with like braised donkey and things like that, and
Hold on.
and part of it was
Duck.
also
Hold on. What'd you say?
donkey,
Duck.
yeah, like
Duck
they eat
braised
donkey.
donkey.
No, red wine braised donkey.
Oh, red wine.
I mean, donkey was one of the things they
I
use
see.
a bunch of meats there, horse, things like
So
that. It's delicious.
donkey. That's their signature dish.
It's one
of them.
Signature, but they eat it. And then part of it was also that I was able to participate in this thing called the Il Gusto, which is this really cool food event. And I cooked for the US there with some other folks. So cooked a dinner there, and so I got to just meet a whole bunch of folks there. So it was a whole experience. It was more than just a restaurant. It was a whole experience there. So yeah, and traveling around the country, spent a lot of time in Emilia-Romagna, and then on the West Coast in the Ligurian area. And Piedmont, obviously. Yeah, and then just whirled around, Europe a little bit, and then came back. And like I said, was introduced to Floyd, started working at Tabla, and it was amazing. It was like a cook's dream.
Yeah, was it?
Yeah.
How long had Tabla been open then?
Maybe 5-6 years, I think.
Okay.
Something
and
like
for
that.
anyone who doesn't know Tabla was this really sort of game-changing Indian restaurant that was part of the Union Square Hospitality Group. How would you describe Tabla? I never ate there. It was still around when I was in New York, but I just never got to eating there. How would you describe it as a restaurant and the impact that it had on the industry?
I mean, you kind of say it was ahead of its time. It really brought Indian food to the forefront, but even then, I think people weren't quite like ready as a consumer culture to fully embrace Indian food. But it was everything that you would want out of just an incredible sort of, I want to say French kitchen, but not necessarily that it was French, just like very technique driven. So I'm saying this from the eyes of a cook, but I could maybe talk about it as a customer as well, but very technique driven. Every technique you could think of that you want to learn, you could learn there. But through the lens of Indian cuisine, and Indian cuisine is very, if you don't know, it's similar to like Mexican or many Middle Eastern. There's so many regions of India that the difference between Goan cuisine and Kashmiri or something or hybrid, they're very different. And so you also learned all these flavors and of course spices that you never would have ever learned otherwise.
I imagine,
and see these parallels between different cuisines, the way you wouldn't think about Indian cuisine. And so it was kind of a cook's dream in that we got to work with all these spices that you had never seen before and all these flavors. And so you learned a lot about flavors you probably wouldn't have seen before. And Floyd was such a technician that we were breaking down all of our own, every type of animal you can think of. We were getting in Rouen ducks and air curing them and blowing them fans before service and brining and like frying squab and just so many things that like, that were just incredible, sprouting all of our own beans for salads and doing these really cool, like, just it was really like a wonderland.
Yeah, definitely ahead of their time.
Yeah, and then the restaurant was also bifurcated between like this sort of street food type concept called Bread Bar, and then up top was Tabla, and Tabla was like the fine dining, and Bread Bar was sort of the more like casual like there's a big bar and
I forgot about Bread
downstairs. Bar. Oh my god, and I mean honestly, I think Bread Bar was. I feel like we're like more of the universally loved food, cheese culture, and
it was like just the different naans and toppings and chutneys and everything.
Yeah, so you learned bread making, you learned all these really cool marinades, you learned how to make rice the right way and how to clean it, and just so much in this tiny kitchen. And like any job, you learn things from every job I've had in a kitchen. Of course, there's so much you learn about how to cook, but then you also learn these really like amazing sort of lessons about business and life that are the reason why I think chefs make incredible entrepreneurs. I remember there was a blackout in New York and
the big blackout, right?
Yeah. And we had headlamps on and like candy burners in the bread bar and just like serving food there because we can't close. We got rent to pay. And I love that, which is interesting because like in retrospect, I don't know if that would, people might be upset now. Like I don't want to have to work. I fucking loved it. Yeah. So that was Tabla. I was there for quite a while, and then ended up going to. I was supposed to go to Cafe Gray right away, but they had delayed in opening. So Great Kunz, and so I ended up. This guy John Shaw was the GM of Tabla, and he went to go run Bouley as the GM. and called me up, and and I ended up. He was like, "Hey, you want to come be a sous chef here?" I was not like, I mean, the sous chefs there at the time were, way more, experienced than me, but I went to work there. That was an incredible experience. Although, I'll be honest, it's not a great kitchen to be in for many reasons, but it's also an incredible kitchen to be in for many other reasons. And
sure, yeah. I mean, the kitchen at Bouley, David Bouley is he's one of the legends of New York City chefs. If you look at the family tree of chefs, he's at one of the top with Danielle and Jean-Georges, and these guys that really were game-changing chefs. But I think when you were there, correct me if I'm wrong, but Cesar Ramirez was the chef there. Is that right?
Yeah. So Cesar was the CDC, and then you had Evan Sung and PJ Kalapa and David Santos and Christina Tosi and Alex Grunert. And I mean,
you said Evan Sung. Did you mean Evan Rich?
Oh my God! Yeah, I said. I'm sorry. Yeah. I was with Evan yesterday. Evan Rich.
That's funny. That's funny.
Not Evan Sung.
I didn't know he worked there. Yeah, no, Evan Rich. Yeah.
He did not.
Well, it's
Evan
funny
Rich.
When you mentioned
Sorry, Evan Rich.
when you mentioned the blackout. When I interviewed Evan on this podcast, we talked about the blackout from his perspective at Bouley, which was this crazy 2-day experience that he'll never forget. And you just brought up the blackout as well. So I think that's pretty funny. And the two of you end up working at Bouley together.
Yeah. He, it was great working, next to Evan. I think, he was pretty stoic in the way that he
sure,
worked,
yeah,
quiet,
yeah.
but very, very, very like just solid cook.
Absolutely.
And also just generally just a really, really nice person. So it was a really great crew there.
Yeah.
And just very, very, very talented group of folks. But, I'll be honest, like there was a bit of a toxicity there. It was sort of, dog eat dog, and not
without a doubt. Yeah.
Not necessarily in a good way, to be honest. And not, I don't think it was the cook's fault, but like, obviously, like I have a recipe company now, and one of the things that was a bit frustrating was there was no like, here's how you make the, this parsley puree or this Kool-Aid. It was just like, figure it out. And
it was like that. It was like telephone, right? Like this guy did it. Like, is this correct? And then you get to service. If it's not right, then it's you.
Yeah,
you're the bad guy.
And obviously, like double clicking on that, like the idea that one of your most famous dishes, an ocean herbal broth, isn't completely documented, so you make sure that every customer has it the right way, and it all depends on if the cook that happens to be there does it right, is kind of crazy. But that's how it was.
That's kind of how it was in the old days. It was passed down the line.
Yeah.
You work this station. How do I do it?
Thank God Evan Rich happened to memorialize the ratio of butter to potato in the pomme puree.
Oh, so good.
At least we knew that, because it was kind of the first time I was showing. It was just like, it's these peeled fingerlings and
peeled
fingerlings is basically what you do, and so some of that was good sort of learnings I took to what we do now. But it was overall a great experience. But
I never worked there, but between Evan Rich, who I worked with in New York, and then my roommate PJ Kalapa, who's a chef at Scampi up in New York now.
Oh, I don't know. He was your roommate.
Yeah, we were roommates. So when we first moved down to New York after going to the Culinary Institute, we were roommates. So I would get every day, we get home from service exhausted. We just tell each other's war stories. So I feel like I know so much about Bouley, even though I never actually worked there.
Yeah. Oh man, the number of artichoke lobster terrines that PJ must have made among other things. I remember he was an intern, I believe, from CIA at the time when I was there.
Yeah, he may have been. Yeah.
And he got doused in blue food coloring when he left, which is a good thing. You wouldn't get that.
Right. I don't know if that happens anymore these days, but the tradition always was, if you left a kitchen and people actually liked you, they would send you off in a really disgusting way, typically, that involved some sort of tar and feathering type
or
thing.
Fish sauce and or at least an ice bath. But
at Oceana, I was the intern. I did my internship there, and I left. In general, the kitchen liked me or whatever. But I started getting word of fermenting salmon heads somewhere in the kitchen that people had in a bucket, like multiple days ahead. Fish guts, everything in there, right? And I'm like, all right, I got to find this thing, right? I had to locate this bucket of fermenting fish guts that they're planning on dumping on me. I didn't find it. However, when they went to dump it on me, I was quick enough. It only like got like my back shoulder a little bit, but I remember feeling salmon heads hitting me. It's all in good fun. It's a little bit of hazing and all that, but it was all in good fun. And I've had countless stories of other chefs in my kitchens leaving, and we do something fun like that.
Yeah,
never that extent. That was probably the grossest I was ever a part of. But
we had many stories of that. Some I can't really tell, but some I remember tying one cook to a post, and we threw water balloons. But it was, I promise it was all in good fun, and they were very excited about it. Yeah. But because it meant something to
I know a guy who got handcuffed to a bike rack, and they basically doused him with liquid and doused him with flour, and to the point where he couldn't breathe. It's actually a good friend of mine now. Like he started like gagging because he couldn't breathe from the flour. I was like, all right, that was a little dangerous.
Yeah, that's a little much. Yeah, that's a little much. But
you can't think out too far ahead sometimes. It's kept
no. Yeah, we've all messed up a couple. I messed up once with cayenne pepper. I'm sorry, John Economo, if I didn't realize what would happen. But anyways, but it was a great kitchen. Oceana was great. Bouley was great. I think Cafe Gray was, while I was at Bouley, I got the call that like, hey, we're open, and so I finally decided. Yeah, I had always wanted to work for Kunz, and it was probably the best job I ever had, Cafe Gray, for a number of reasons.
Was it?
But, yeah.
I remember it like yesterday. That moment of sheer panic after I put my recipe book down, and a few minutes later, I went back and it was gone. It was a legit moment of panic. After searching the kitchen, I realized one of my cooks had mistakenly taken it. And that's exactly what happened to Josh Sharkey, founder and CEO of Meez. Except his story didn't have the happy ending mine did, because he never found his recipe book. And all that written knowledge and all those recipes that he had built up in his repertoire over the years basically went poof. And it was at that moment that Josh realized there had to be a better way, and that he knew he could leverage technology to make sure that this doesn't happen to anyone else. Not only that, but as chef and restaurant owner with 20 plus years of experience in fine dining, Josh was frustrated that there was really only financial and inventory software available for kitchens. While those are important, they don't address the actual process of cooking, training, production, collaboration, and execution. If you're a chef, line cook, mixologist, or operator, or maybe just manage recipes intended for professional kitchens, Meez is built just for you. And here's the thing, Meez is free for the entire culinary industry. You can store and organize your recipes with the most advanced recipe scaling technology on the planet for free. But if you upgrade to the premium tier, you can even get more. Train and onboard your team, manage production, and even process invoices. Plus, with Meez, you get laser accurate food costs, allergen data, and nutrition labeling faster than you could say gluten-free. That's because Josh's team of chefs and registered dietitians have been testing thousands of ingredients in the Meez database for years to ensure that all of the yield loss, unit conversion, allergen data, and more are built right into the ingredients as you add them to your recipes, so your food costs are more accurate than ever before. Get started by visiting getmeez.com/Chef Radio. And as a listener of the Chef Radio podcast, you can get 25 free recipe uploads to your Meez account by signing up today. So once again, learn more at getmeez.com. That's GETMEEZ.com/Chef Radio. That restaurant opened to a lot of fanfare, without a doubt. I think the headline was always that the kitchen had the better view of Central Park than the actual restaurant, the diners, just the way it was situated in the Time Warner Center there. But it was one of those restaurants that had so many expectations for it. I don't remember, it ended up closing, but was it because Gray passed, or was it?
No, Gray passed long after that.
Okay.
Gray passed long after. It closed because, the rent was, I think it was like $180K. Water alone was like $30K, the steam. And even, I think the first year we might have done, I'm not sure if I should be saying like 12 million. And then, 9 million was like the average. still,
couldn't make
it work. But, it was opulent, and it was opulent, but not necessarily like at a price point that you,
sure,
that, and Gray being Gray, like, we would send out white truffle and black truffle mid courses to all kinds of people.
Right.
And, and every night there was, someone, Bill Clinton or Will Smith or, every night was that. So you would be sending out a lot of mid courses and of course any cook that came in, or just we mid course was not like a nice to have. It was almost like everybody got it regardless. So I'm sure the food cost there wasn't great, but still like another example of like a wonderland of like learning how to do so much and also just a culture of a team that
we'll talk about Gray Kunz from a chef standpoint a little bit. He was so instrumental. Like he talked about somebody who had a incredible influence on the way people ate in America once he started doing what he did. But talk about the food, the style, and what you remember from working there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it started, long before Cafe Gray at L'Espinasse, and obviously before then. He's Swiss born, but spent a lot of time in Asia as well. So he has this. He had this sort of mix of very, very technical, very French driven cuisine inspired by Freddy Girardet and the like, but with these flavor profiles that that you would not have expected and didn't exist back then when thinking about that kind of cuisine, or that sort of like haute cuisine,
right?
Calamansi and lemongrass and kaffir and harissa and all kinds of things. And so one of the most incredible things about Gray was his ability to combine ingredients in his head. They structurally all made sense, and then he was also able to then sort of like communicate that in a way where we could, as chefs, take that and run with it and find ourselves using chamomile in a chicken dish and it working. Or, I think that's one of Gray's greatest legacies, independent of just he's an incredible chef and made incredible food.
Okay.
But I think a lot of chefs can attest to, like, he also produced incredible chefs. So many chefs came out of his kitchen.
So many.
So talented. And he had a way of empowering others to do really well and to make delicious food. But the use of, it's funny, it's almost like a joke internally of like sugar, salt, and cayenne. Everything was, sweet, salt, heat.
A little bit of spice, huh?
No matter what, even if there was not like, there wasn't a dish that was like, oh, well, this kind of dish, you're going to have like a sweet and sour and like everything, every sauce. It doesn't matter if it was even just like a venison jus with some gin and juniper berries in it. Everything gets a little bit of sugar, a little salt, a little, on the pickup.
Interesting.
And I think that approach was very sort of unique to him.
Well, it probably brightened up what some would consider some sort of French food has notoriously a little heavy, little rich, right? Where using these ingredients that were more based in Asia and then the flavors of a little bit of vinegar, a little bit of salt, a little sugar, which is really my way of cooking as well. Like I have agrodolce, a little bottle of agrodolce on the pass at all times, because that just can add just a little element, whether you put a little bit on part of the chicken dish or to finish a veg and pick it up. Like it just elevates it just 100%. On the palate just a little bit more.
Yeah. The other thing I'll say, just, I could talk about Gray for a long time, but, and this might be controversial to say, but in my mind, he is the greatest manipulator of truffles of any chef ever.
Manipulator of truffles?
Period, stop. Like when I say manipulate, he uses truffles. His truffle dishes are, in my opinion, just my opinion, are the best, hands down, no question. Just the way that part of it is just like the base of most of his truffle dishes are this. He preserves truffles, Madeira, port, and black truffle, and that juice is, just a little bit to finish, and so every type of truffle.
You would buy the winter truffle and preserve them in house.
Yeah. So we would get pounds and pounds of truffles. I mean, sometimes we would get the pieces as well.
Sure.
And just preserve them. Yeah, you just have mason jars and you preserve them. And the truffle itself, you would, I don't want to give away the farm here, but you would dice them up and chop them, and basically you would crash the preserved truffles with some. A lot of times it would be Madeira and port or cherry. Crash that, some veal jus, but everything finished with this truffle juice. Among other things, but just the way that he used truffles. I think a lot of times truffles are just like the thing that you add on top of something to just like add truffles, like shaving truffles on something, which there's nothing wrong with that. But the dish was truffle, and then it happened to have shaved truffle on top. It's almost like the shaving was whatever. Like if we're going to have foie and truffles, there's going to be a truffle sauce that is intensely truffle, plus has that sort of sweet and sour. Maybe there's some raisin, maybe there's some, some brandy or something like that. And if you didn't shave any truffle on it, it would still be incredible. And then you just, of course, then crash at the table with some sliced truffles.
Right.
And that's fun. But yeah, I think, his approach to using truffles was, in my mind, the best.
What was he like in the kitchen?
Soft-spoken, but you knew if he was upset, he would get a little bit red. Candidly, like Larry Finn, shout out to Larry, ran the kitchen at Cafe Gray, so he was running service most of the time. Gray would be there to tasting a lot and making sure that guests were really happy, and working with the cooks and things like that.
Right.
So he definitely was sort of an orchestrator.
Nice, very nice, very nice. Yeah, he's in the pantheon of chefs when it comes to New York City for sure. And you mentioned the Kunz spoon earlier. This podcast is built for young culinarians who are, that really seek out some guidance and some stories and, journeys of other chefs. And I don't know how popular the Kunz spoon is these days in the newest younger generation, but there's nothing better than having a Kunz spoon in your hand when you're cooking. It is by far the most universal tool in fine dining that has ever been invented. I'd say a spoon is not new. A spoon was like one of the first utensils ever. But the way that this spoon is designed and the weight of it and the balance of it, and once you have one for plating, you're like, you'll never go back.
I agree. It's not used just as a spoon because the weight is such that you can use it for other things.
Oh my God, so many things.
But it's designed, with the tip of it being curved enough that you can get to the edge of all the pans. And it's perfect for air-rising. It's also perfect for, there's so many things that it's good for. We have stockpiles of them at Meez.
Okay.
And we have a little Meez thing that we do, and we often, like, they're gifts that we give to customers.
They're great gifts. They really are.
Yeah, and it's in the app. There's this whole unit of measure conversion database that you get as you're writing, so you can use any unit you want and it'll convert. And you can use one Kunz spoon. A measurement. Sauce.
It's actually a measurement there.
Yeah, nice. And there's a small Kunz spoon as well. But by the way, the large Kunz spoon is 22 milliliters, so you know you're going to get that. But yeah, I agree. It is hands down the best spoon. They make a mini version of it. They make a slotted version of it. They have like a gold version, and there's a lot of different versions. And I think Jimmy, his son, is working on some new things as well.
Oh, cool, cool.
I don't remember some other spoon, but yeah, it's a great spoon.
Very nice, very nice, very nice. So then, your time at Cafe Gray led you to your next adventure, which was a bit of a departure from fine dining. Talk a little bit about your first foray into entrepreneurship and what that was for you as a young cook.
Yeah. So a buddy of mine who I cooked with at Tabla named Brandon Gillis, and we had started like a side company. All of us have like these little side companies as cooks because we need money. We had this like catering company called Clove. And
I had one too, together. Man. I had one as well.
I bet.
Yeah, I do private dinners out in the Hamptons and stuff all the time.
Yep, that's exactly right.
You had to.
Hamptons or Greenwich, and so we were working together, and we lived like right next to each other in Park Slope. And I think Brandon was like the catalyst for the idea of like, let's do a fast casual restaurant. We lived in Park Slope, and there was it was a desert when as it related to like just accessible food that was quick, easy, and delicious. Mm-hmm. And this was before Shake Shack or anything like that. Right. So the concept was sort of a sustainable approach to American fast food, or like an artisan approach. Mm-hmm. So we were using all the techniques that we knew from cooking and all the farmers and things that we were working with to create basically like a hot dog concept called Bark. It was a combination of his name and mine. Everybody called him B. So it's B, and my last name Shark. People call me Shark. So B, Shark, Bark. So Bark hot dogs opened to a lot of like acclaim, and we did really well. Candidly, my thought was I would open it, get it running, and then step away. Mm-hmm. It ended up happening the opposite, where Brandon stepped away. So I was a bit bummed that I had left the fine dining world and that it was becoming farther and farther away from me. Mm-hmm. And I also was getting more separated from the industry.
Right.
Like, and Floyd, by the way, I could tell he was like, what are you doing, man? Like, what? You cook? What?
God, disappointed father.
Yeah, I mean, it turns. I spoke with Barca after Floyd's passing about it a lot, and we've had some closure, and I think it's good. Yeah, I was definitely like, it was a tough time, even though it was a good time. It was this dichotomy of like, I was excited that I had this business that was doing well, and also upset with myself that I wasn't doing this thing that I had spent the last, 12, 15 years doing. It's like,
well, in some ways you were using some of that knowledge, right? But I imagine
for sure
that only goes so far when you're talking about a hot dog, artisanal hot dog concept.
Yeah, and I think also it was a learning lesson for me of entrepreneurship in that, like,
sure, yeah,
we just wanted a really good product. That's all that mattered. Like, we wanted the best hot dog in America. We wanted to approach everything like, if we're going to make baked beans, we're going to use the heirloom Jacob's Cattle baked bean from Maine, and we're going to make sure that, like, it's slow cooked, and we're going to use these ham hocks from this place. Like, it was all, and it was really good and and a pretty affordable price, especially like, relative to what people charge today. But back then it was very novel. Like, the idea of using great products and a hot dog that didn't cost 99 cents and using all biodegradable products. It was novel. And, in my youth, I was 28 when I opened it. It was like, people don't get it. What's their problem? And the learning lesson for me, like, moving forward from that was, it doesn't matter how good a product is. You have to be able to tell a story, and you have to, like, bring people in and help them, be a part of why you believe it's good. And so that was a really, really good learning lesson for me of just moving forward. So I left Bark and ended up partnering with this restaurant group called Orify Brands. And the impetus was really like, I wanted to build Meez. I was really excited about building Meez, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And I knew just honestly, I knew I needed a lot of money to build it, because I knew that the delta between what existed, meaning Google Sheets, Google Docs, what we use, Word docs, what we use to write recipes, Evernote, the delta between what existed and what I wanted to build was great enough that the MVP, like the minimum viable product that I wanted to put out, wasn't enough for it to just be kind of like really, really, really basic. So I needed enough cash that I could build it the right way and spend the time to build it right. So I partnered with this restaurant group, and basically we said, like, I'll come help scale this business with you if you help fund Meez.
Nice.
So that's what we did. I ended up working there longer than I would have expected, and ended up becoming the chief operating officer of the business. We went from I think 14 locations to over 100 or so. We opened up 6 more brands and acquired Le Pan Quotidien and Maison Kaiser, and had some fine dining, some fast casual. We owned the rights to Five Guys. It was this really big business. And so it was very helpful in that I was able to sort of build Meez within the ecosystem of that restaurant.
Right. That sounds like that's your wheelhouse, right? Those are your people right there that you're trying to capture.
Yeah. Well, it was good because we wanted to capture, we knew, I knew fine dining, I knew that world. So I knew how to build something that would work for that. And I needed to learn, how does fast casual, how does QSR, how does that work at scale? And so it was a huge learning ground.
QSR, what does that mean?
QSR is quick service. Ironically, we don't actually service, we don't really actually work with a lot of quick service restaurants, more so fast casual. So fast casual is think Sweet Green or Naya or Maman, something like that. But Kava, exactly. Yeah. So full service and fast casual is kind of our sweet spot at Meez. And so just a lot of learning lessons there of what are the pain points, independent of just what I wanted to build as the core of the platform, which had nothing to do with that. Was really just, I want the greatest recipe tool in the world. That's what I want.
We all know this is a relationship business, and having great partners to support you is critical to your business's success. And personally, having Singer Equipment as a longtime supporter and friend of this podcast is deeply meaningful to me for many reasons. I was introduced to Singer Equipment a decade ago, and we have been using them ever since, and they are truly a partner in our success. From providing equipment solutions, to smallware sourcing, to support, to finding the perfect tableware, each step of the way, they are committed to their customers' strategy and success because they know your success translates to their success. And whether you're in the Boston area, New York, DC, Philadelphia, doesn't matter where you are, they are there to support you and deliver the critical resources you need to run your restaurant every day. And this is why it should be no surprise that Singer was recently awarded the industry's highest honor for the 3rd time as Food Service Equipment and Supply Magazine's Dealer of the Year. If you need anything, reach out to Singer today to learn more about their passion and their expertise and their commitment to excellent service. Visit singerequipment.com/podcast chef to sign up for their exclusive offers and events and experience the service-driven difference that you can only get from Singer Equipment, Food, Equipment, and Supply Magazine's 2023 Dealer of the Year. Congratulations, Singer. Well done. So building the greatest recipe tool in the world was your plan from the get-go. What was the impetus of this plan, though? What was it that made you think, okay, I want to do this because X, Y, or Z?
Well, the original idea was much more basic, and it happened 20 some odd years ago. I was working for Floyd, actually, but in the mornings, I worked for Mario Batali had this salumi shop in Union Square in New York City.
Yeah.
And this guy, Dan Latham, ran it. And in the mornings, I'd work for free making salumi with them.
Okay.
Prosciutto, pancetta, coppa, lomo, everything you could think of. And I had this notebook of all the recipes. When I say recipes, I mean like temperature, time, humidity, every
pH,
touch, feel,
all that, yeah.
all that stuff. And as well as of course, we all had these notebooks. I had all my ideas and things in it was one of my notebooks. And then on my days off, I'd work 6 days, but oftentimes I'm a 20-year-old kid. I would go stage in the restaurant just for fun. And so at the time, there's this place called Veritas that this guy Scott Bryant was a chef. And I was like, I want to see what they're doing. So I went and staged there, and I lost the friggin' notebook.
You lost it at Veritas.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to it, but I just somehow I lost it there. And I was like, oh my God, I'm never losing a recipe again. I want to digitize everything. So originally it was just like, I want to digitize all my recipes.
Okay.
That was back then. There wasn't even Evernote, let alone.
Yeah, you didn't have too many options.
Yeah. But then fast forward through being a chef in more places, starting to be a manager of cooks, and starting to run a restaurant, starting to be an entrepreneur.
Right.
I was like, oh my God, there's way more to this. And all the spreadsheets that we have of writing recipes and writing the different scales, different batch sizes, and having to use different cells and all the other the time it takes to where do you put pictures and I want to share this, but I don't want you to see that. It was just it sucked. And I started looking around to see if what existed. And still to this day, it's all just financial software that happens to have some sort of component that's like an invoice of the recipe.
I see.
And more so, I was just pissed. We're a pretty big group of we're a pretty big industry. We're a craft. There's designers. There's architects. There's all these crafts that have tools for them. There's developers. They have GitHub, and architects have AutoCAD. It's why don't we have our thing? And I was just mad, and being me, I was like, well, then I guess if it doesn't exist, I guess I'll try to build it. And
you have a culinary degree, might as well become a tech guy too, right?
Yeah. So, it was obviously a huge uphill learning curve to understand technology. And it's almost like, not that it's disenfranchising, but it's tough because with technology, things just move slower no matter what. In a kitchen, you're like, I have an idea. I want to cure kohlrabi, and then I want to pickle it, and then I want to char on the grill. I can do that tomorrow, or in a week. But it doesn't affect anything else. I don't really have to change anything. But with software, especially once you start creating a more complex system, it gets longer and longer it takes to deploy things and to make things and to innovate, because they affect so many other parts of the software, and you don't build them. I'm not the developers, right? You have a developer team, and they're not on a whim, just building a new thing. So I want a million other things in the app, and they all have to happen on a timeline. So that part was a wake up moment for me. There's a really cool book called the Mythical Man Month that I think anybody would get value out of.
Mythical Man Month?
Yeah.
Okay.
It talks about why it takes so long to build software, and why it's a exponential effort, not a not a linear. Meaning, if I want one thing and then I want another thing, it's not 1 + 1. It's usually if I want one thing and then I want two more things, it's to the third power. And if I want another thing, it's to the third power. It takes longer. So among other lessons, but it's a really good book in general.
So then you have this idea, and you're like, okay, I'm going to get some developers on board. At the same time, you got to be raising capital, which you were doing with the work with the company that you were at. And then when did you launch this officially, and how long has it been around?
So we launched the product to kitchens officially the beginning of 2021, January 2021. We were supposed to launch in 2020. like right around April. But as I'm sure everybody knows, pandemic hit,
Sure.
and I was like, I'm not going to try to sell a tool to kitchens right now.
Right,
So
right.
I pivoted, and I told my developers to stop what they're doing, build some like consumer version of meez on top of what we had with the professional version. And basically we just gave the app away to chefs and created this thing called Recipes for Relief for the first 6 months. And said, put your recipes in. And we created a e-com platform for them to sell their recipes and recipe books to the public. And 100% of the proceeds went to the chefs and their businesses.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
And we helped them raise tens of thousands of dollars, and some really cool chefs putting recipes out. And so that's what we did before we launched. It was it's also really helpful in terms of like getting feedback.
Sure. Yeah, of course.
I probably could have just stuck with that, to be honest with you. But part of the hypothesis around what I'm doing is that I actually, first and foremost, want to make sure every chef in the world loves this as a tool to store your recipes. So we decided, like, let's put that on the shelf for now. We'll probably come back to it, but let's just focus on building this recipe platform for food professionals. And so we launched in 2021. Basically, January 2021 is when we were like officially live.
So you're just over 2 years old then?
Yeah.
Wow, incredible. And what has been the success story so far? What have you really noticed that you really hit right out of the gate? And then also, what are some of the challenges that you've come across as you've had to go through the last couple of years?
Because we were in beta for quite a while, we learned a lot. And candidly, when we launched, we grew really fast because this didn't exist. And so it didn't take much to, like, we still to this day don't have a sales team. We're just starting to create the semblance of it. But a chef would just see the product and say, oh my God, where the heck has this been for the last 20 years?
Right.
And so we would just, sign them up and there was still a lot of work to do with the product. There always is. But it was something that just didn't exist. And I think that something that we try to get through with the tool and with our service, like most of our team that aren't developers, are chefs or sort of mixologists or bakers or something. And I think the goal, independent of like the product being really good, is that like when you touch it or feel it, or you talk to somebody in the team, it's like very clear that you're talking to someone that is part of your world, and that you're like, this was made for you.
Right.
And I think that's what has helped us sort of, grow really quickly.
Nice.
So I think the success was just the adoption rate, from the beginning. And we got some really incredible chefs on board right away that just saw the tool and like the Jose Andres group. And
so Jose
really
Andres group.
Yeah.
Okay.
They've been with us since for a long
very
time.
cool.
And many similar restaurants that, a lot of restaurants you could think of, I'm sure they're probably using the tool. So I think the initial success was just the adoption rate and the ability to grow pretty quickly. I think some of the downsides, the things that were like tougher, were, I think I underestimated the intuitiveness that I needed to create in terms of like recipe costing.
Okay.
The tool is the tool is built to be like really, really flexible. So it's like, it's in my mind, it's like the easiest place to get a recipe cost in the world for a recipe. But there's a lot of assumptions I made about like, you'll just know that you can do this, and you'll know that you can change this, and you'll know that you can do this. So it was all because I didn't want to like muddy the app with like all these things that told you stuff. I just want you to just have this clean thing. And so that was a learning lesson of like, hey, you got to like let people know, because they might just never know that all these things are possible. And it's still something that we're
well, there's so many different programs out there, software programs out there that your restaurant can get, whether that's sales reporting, labor reporting, all of these different areas. And so often restaurants only barely scratch the surface of what they can do. So I imagine, with chefs, we're not a bunch of like tech nerds all the time. We're just like, okay, how does this fit my life right now? How can it improve my life right now? And what can I do without spending too much time in learning something?
Yeah.
So I see what you're saying, but then again, if they don't know that it can do that, how are they going to get the full experience from it?
Yeah, exactly. I don't even necessarily think that chefs, we get a bad rap as like we're not tech savvy. I think it's just that we don't have a lot of time. So we're going to look at something for 30 seconds, and if we get it, then we'll do something with it. And if we can't, we move on, because we don't have time to like, so that's honestly, that's like 70% of what we do is continually try to make it as easy as we can to just start using the tool. Because it's, by the way, it's free.
It's absolutely free, right?
Yeah, there's obviously a lot of stuff you can pay for, but storing your recipes, organizing them, scaling them, converting units, like sharing them, that's all free.
So any cook out there listening, any sous chef that just wants to keep your recipes, your ideas, everything in one place, and you're not going to lose your notebook someday. I mean, meez is for them.
Yeah, and I did that on purpose because I wanted to everybody that was me 20 years ago or 10 years ago, whatever it was, to just not have that problem ever again. And it's just a place where you can put everything. And then the cool thing is, one, again, because adoption is so important, a lot of the tech is around how easily you can get your recipes. And so you can take a Word doc, a PDF, a spreadsheet, anything, PowerPoint. And there's really cool tech that parses all that out so that it puts it into meez. The recipe looks like what you would actually use in a kitchen, but it's structured so you can scale it and convert it and all that jazz. Nice. Add your videos into every step or pictures. And
so you can do video, picture, all of that.
Every step can have its own picture. You can make this sort of Instagram style, slideshow. But that's all free. And the point of it is that you should, we work at culinary schools, should just take it. It's yours for free. And you own the data, do whatever you want, but you should have a place to store and organize and, manage your recipes. It's built a lot like Google Drive in terms of how to organize things. Okay. You can make different folders or books, we call them, but just use it. And then when you do want to do more with it, if you want to integrate with purchasing, if you want to train your team, if you want to integrate with accounting or, inventory, whatever, you can do all that. And yeah, that stuff's for now is you pay for, even though it's pretty inexpensive. But the idea is that every cook in the world should just have, and every cook, mixologist, just use the free thing. You can just put all your stuff there. It's why have everything in a Google Drive? It's really for any kind of random document when you can put it in a recipe drive. So. And
I imagine you have an app, right? So it all lives right there in the app on your phone.
You could use it on a phone, tablet, computer, any device. Yeah, and you can share. I share recipes back and forth all the time. You can share a whole recipe book. So I also have personally just all these recipe books from Tabla or just all my cocktails or all my desserts, and I can just share access to the book with people so that every time I add a recipe, so even just family and stuff, I put all that stuff in there, and then my mom doesn't have to text me every time she has has a question about recipe.
I got a bunch of avocados. What do I do with them?
Oh my God! It's
my mom does the same stuff.
It's Mom, you don't ever call. Although now with the grandkids, she calls. But it's I get a call when when she needs to know how to make something. I love you, Mom.
Yeah, no doubt about it. What's up, guys? Do you believe in miracles? Because if you do, you're going to love what I have to say next. A few weeks back, I was invited to the Drexel Food Lab where they were testing a new piece of equipment they recently received called the Unox Speed Pro. From the outside, there wasn't anything really that stood out to me about this oven that was going to blow my mind. Had a nice little high-tech LED panel, but that was about it. However, because I already witnessed the insane capabilities of the Unox Iverio and the Unox Combi oven, which they also have at Drexel, I knew this was going to be at least interesting. So to make a long story short, Joel Prosick, who's the regional chef for Unox, was going to demonstrate exactly how this somewhat ordinary looking tabletop oven would be able to cook a sheet of biscuits and a sheet of chocolate chip cookies, right? Simple. Okay. As he explained a little bit about this oven, he goes ahead and nonchalantly puts these two half-sheet pan-sized trays in the oven and closes the door. We continue chatting about the groundbreaking technology, they call it adaptive technology, and how this oven understands exactly what's in it, the volume of product, the humidity, the temperature, yada, yada, yada. Technology stuff. I don't really care about that. I just want to see what the product is, right? And I'm not even kidding you, 4.5 minutes later, these beautiful biscuits and these beautiful chocolate chip cookies come out of the oven ready to eat. 4.5 minutes. Brown, crispy, hot, everything you'd want, right? Unbelievable. My brain couldn't register it. And here's the kicker. This was their quote-unquote oven setting. This didn't even include the blending of the high convection air with the microwaves, which will reheat sandwiches, breads, pastries, whatever you put in that thing, protein, meat, steak, fish, whatever it is, in under a minute. I don't have enough time to get into all the details to make this technology perform these magic tricks in front of my eyes. What we can do is check them out at unox.com, UNOX.com, or get a hold of Matt McKinney. He'll explain this way better than I can. You can call him at 215-514-8310. He'll probably get you up to the Drexel Food Lab if you're local. If not, give him a call anyways. He can explain it and get you set up wherever you are across the country. He's a really good dude, and he'll make sure you're good to go. You can also just check out the show notes, and all that information will be in the notes. So let's get back to the show. Well, that's great, man. So what you said it's free for anyone who just wants to use it for their own personal recipe storage, picture storage, all that. So what are the different tiers that people can buy? Maybe you have a large restaurant group, or maybe you just have a single restaurant. What's available to them to use?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, to organize all your recipes, to scale them by changing an ingredient or converting units of measure. All the units of measure are built in. All the ingredient data is built in.
You also have yield, right? So cook yields on things as well.
Everything. So, like if you don't have to figure any of this stuff out. So if you put a half a cup of diced carrot and 300 grams of avocado and a teaspoon of kosher salt, like we have thousands of ingredients already built in with all the actions of like what you do to them. So we know how much you lost when you peeled a carrot and diced it. And we know how much a cup of that weighs. And we know how much a teaspoon of kosher salt, that's Diamond Crystal versus Morton's versus, it's all just built in. And we continually add to it as well as the allergens.
Do you guys actually work out these yields in a kitchen and you apply them to your platform?
Yep. Yeah. And so before we launched, for like 4 or 5 years, I had chefs and dietitians that were just testing. So we would get cases of garlic, right? Mm-hmm. The peeled or the whole, and we would weigh 100 pieces of garlic hundreds of times over the course of years. And we would peel hundreds of heads of garlic. And what's the average clove of garlic weigh? How much you lose on average when you peel the garlic? And
wow.
And when you peel a carrot or dice a carrot, because the book of yields, first of all, doesn't have it. Most of this doesn't exist there. And a lot of it's kind of, I'm not sure how accurate it is. And there's other like things online that have some of this, but it didn't have enough and it wasn't nearly as accurate. So we just did it all ourselves, and we continually add to it. And we also continually add more allergens and things. So, and all that's, you can just get all those yields. That's just built into the product and for free. That's free. Organizing your recipes is free. You can have unlimited recipes in there. You can, add all the unlimited videos and images and things like that. You can, share unlimited recipes. You can publish them to the web. In a business, it starts really cheap too. So you can just, for $25 a month, you can get all your costs. You can see put in all your costs, and you can add as many like team viewers as you want.
So for example, you just take your invoices and you put your, milk price, your butter price, all of that you're paying.
Yeah.
And then you can, when you create a recipe, it'll take those units of measure compared to the price of the product, and it'll cost out your recipe for you. Is that the idea?
Yeah. So for the $25 a month, you'll write in those costs.
Sure.
If you want, though, you can also upgrade to get invoice processing, so that you can either snap pictures of your invoices if you're at the farmer's market, or if a vendor doesn't have EDI, or we can just directly connect to your vendor, or if you have another inventory system, you can connect to that as well. And it's just a real-time feed every day of all your products that come in. And so every time you update the cost of avocado, it updates across every recipe that uses avocado.
Awesome.
And again, you buy an avocado as like a 48 count case of Haas avocado, but you're probably using 200 grams in a recipe, and it converts automatically for you. So you don't have to do that math, or
that's incredible.
Half a cup of diced avocado.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So
now
that's part of
the invoice processing is when you snap a picture, you upload it. Is AI reading that invoice, or is that somebody?
It's a combination.
Else?
Yeah, so it's a combination of OCR technology, which means optical character recognition. So it basically digitizes the text.
Sure.
Coupled with like ML, coupled with people, because no matter what, there's a layer of people that I think is important to put on there, because you just never get it all. And I always hated having invoices come in with other sort of like invoice processing that was like, dude, like this is clearly not right. So, there's
so the human element just kind of gives it a look over and make sure that everything is checking out properly.
Yep. And then you can add on multiple locations. You can connect to accounting. We have like services as well, like, auditing and, consulting services. We're launching a really cool new product to help you engineer your entire menu.
Oh, really?
What's
that?
Imminently. I don't know how much I should talk about it, but it's a really, really like
innovative.
Well,
you still got probably another few weeks before this comes out, but we don't have to talk about it right now. Give the overview.
It's I think for me, the ability to, first of all, I hate reports because I'm a big believer in just-in-time information, not just in case. And I think, again, like, look, financial, like reporting systems, ERPs, they're important, but, they're all after the fact. It's after the thing happened. And you lost money no matter what. So you have to sell those products. You have to buy those things in order to learn that you had a cost that was wrong, or that was too high, or the profit wasn't this. And also that's completely independent of the culinary process, right? It's just like, a purchasing and a reporting and a data analysis exercise, which most of the time we don't even have the time for, right? So I wanted to build a product that in real time, you can look at your menu, you can write a menu, it doesn't matter if you've sold it or not, and you can start to understand, where are the outliers? What should I tweak here? And what is my total menu profit? What is my overall food cost, and how do I lower that? Because no matter what, like in a restaurant or any food business, people can tell you all day long, we're going to help you reduce waste, and we're going to optimize your this and optimize your that. And it's like, yeah, maybe, but most of the time you're a good operator or you're not a good operator. And I can't control if there isn't systems in place. There are things you can control with consistency and continuity of how people make things, so that they make it the right way and that you're clear about like what to do. And I think that's important. But ultimately, the best way to actually improve your margins is to lower your food cost percent of your menu. Because if you have like a 25% food cost, and you can lower it to 24% by tweaking your menu without like impacting flavor and all that stuff, which you can do, you've just saved 1%, no matter what you do. Even if you waste the same amount, you just save 1%. So for every $1 million, obviously, that's 10 grand. That's what we're building now. Obviously, there's a bunch of other cool stuff with menus to just being able to share with your servers and things. So
yeah, I assume, now that you've got meez under your belt, you're seeing other opportunities out there where you can help bolster your platform a little bit more to give more services to the potential clients. So that's really great. What do you think the general benefits that people are seeing the most out of using your product after, having it out in the market for a little over 2 years?
Yeah, I think honestly, like from an ROI perspective, it's like very clearly time and money. So like the amount of time that you save being able to get all your recipe content, built out and structured and calculated without having to do all that work. I mean, we're talking about like person's job in some organizations and, hours and hours, of other person's job and when it's part of someone else's job, and also just like the ability to onboard a new, team member. We do like these case studies, and like on average we see like literally like a 70% reduction in how long it takes to onboard a team member, because you can just give them, it's like, here's the recipe book for this, here's exactly how to make everything, here's a step-by-step. So there's a lot of that. The recipe engineering piece helps them engineer their recipe, just like I was talking about engineering the menus. And so on average, it's like we see like 2 to 3% reduction in like the ability to like reduce your food costs. So it's like labor and food savings are like, from a business standpoint, what we see the most of. I'll be honest with you, like that stuff it's important and it's important for us as we're growing, obviously, to be able to communicate that, and customers do sort of see that. The intangible thing that I think we see the most is just like when they actually start to use these recipes in the kitchen, just, being able to like scale and convert and see this recipe in a way that's like this living, breathing version of what you were used to in a recipe book. It's harder to quantify because it's just like this experience that once you have it, you're like, you kind of don't want to go back.
Right. It's one of those things, once you get a taste of it and you realize what you've been doing for so long is slow and arduous, then this is going to make it that much more efficient in your kitchen. And, with today, labor cost is the number one killer in our industry right now. Food is up there as well, but, labor, because training, lack of skilled labor, lack of people who want to be there, sous chefs who shouldn't be sous chefs because they're not ready for it. And here now you can, as long as you put good data in, you can have a tool that kind of takes care of some of those issues.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's a ton of labor you save, and not just like labor savings, but the ability to memorialize how and why you do everything in a way that's digestible so that you don't need superstars at every station. You don't need people that have had 10 years of experience or 5 years of experience or 2 years of experience in order to work the hot up station or in order to work that prep station, because like you can just dial in exactly what needs to happen. And if you update something, everybody's updated in real time.
So if let's say I hired Tim, right, and he's going to be my new entremet, am I able to just send him an email with a link to the recipe booklet for that station? And then he just pulls out, starts looking at the recipes and techniques and photos and videos.
Yep. Yeah. You add on Tim and you can decide, like, if you have, let's just say you have like there's High Street, there's Fork, and there's maybe you got an R&D kitchen as well. And you're like, I want Tim to be able to view everything, right? Except maybe I don't want him to view the R&D kitchen.
Okay.
And I want him to have edit access to High Street because he's the CDC there, Chef Cuisine. So I want him to create specials, but only view access to everything else. And maybe he can see cost here. So you can add them on and they will get access to whatever you want them to see. You can quickly remove the access.
Wow, that's incredible.
And by the way, when you do that, Tim now has a free version of Meez to take with him for life too.
Sure.
Because he gets his own free version of the app as well. So yeah, you can just add your team on pretty quickly and remove them when you need to.
Very cool. Very cool. Do you feel that you are getting the same fulfillment out of your job now that you were in the kitchen? Like, did it kind of replace that passion that you had for cooking?
It's so interesting, like the question, because one, I ask myself so often, like, why do I do what I do? And why do I keep starting new companies? And why did I cook? And I would worry that I'm cooking because I want to, this sort of, external gratification of like, I make delicious food.
Right.
I see someone's face and they because they're happy, I'm happy. But, with cooking, I love to cook more than probably anything else in the world. And what I love most is like, being deep in the weeds of like, I have this long prep list of things I'm going to make.
Right.
And I'm seasoning this sauce and this thing is braising in the oven. And like that feeling is incredible for me. And I get the same feeling digging into this product because there's so much for us to build and we're constantly sort of improving. And there's like literally millions of things to improve. And we get feedback from chefs of a lot of it, of what to, update or improve or change. And so there's like this constant iteration that's very similar to like cooking. And the other side is like, I get the feedback from chefs of like, oh my God, where's this been for? But I'll be honest, I miss cooking in kitchens because I love it so much. But I love building Meez, I think, more than anything I've ever done.
Right on.
It's just so satisfying to know that like we can have this impact on the whole industry, not just like a small street or a community.
Right.
Or,
Yeah. No, it's large change, and you're at the forefront of it, and that's really exciting.
I appreciate that.
What else do people need to know about Meez?
Well, what I would say is, especially for your audience, go start for free. And we are just getting started. we have so much more to do, and we're doing it with the industry. So the more feedback we get, the better. So if you just go to getmeez.com, MEEZ, and just you can start for free, or you can reach out to us and we can walk you through like the full breadth of the platform. But ultimately, I think what I think is important to know is that the goal here is to create the universal recipe medium, right? A place where every food professional in the world, whether you're a chef or a mixologist or a baker, or you cook in kitchens, or you make recipes for, a living, that you have a place where you can store and organize and work with your recipes for free for life. And I want that to be the universal language that then you can then take that and do lots of other things with. And so we only accomplish that if everybody,
very nice,
is a part of it. So
that's great, man. That's great. And I imagine like You say worldwide. There's no borders to this thing because it's applicable around the globe. So that's really exciting. I mean, talk about huge opportunity for you and an opportunity for you to have a massive impact on the industry as a whole. So that's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's already in, I think, like maybe 19, 20 countries. And you can translate meez into like 120 some odd languages.
Just
so
push a button and you got whatever language you want, right?
Yeah, we still have work to do with currency and things to actually do it. But in terms of like the recipe, the recipe itself. Yeah.
Nice. Listen, Josh, it's been good getting to know you over the last couple of months, and your product, I highly recommend it for anyone out there. This was an opportunity I felt that I could use this platform to showcase something that I believe in, that I think is a real game changer for the industry. And somebody who has your background, I think also just makes it that much more trustworthy, if that's the right word, because you know what it's like to be in the trenches in the fine dining world. And not that this is just for fine dining restaurants, because that's not. Probably the contrary. It's this is a tool for any restaurant out there. But the fact that you first and foremost fell in love with food in the industry and then did something like this, I think that speaks volumes to the quality of work that you were taught, but also the quality of work that you're going to continue to do. So good stuff.
Well, I appreciate that, man. That's really, really kind of you. And I know we had just talked, a couple weeks back, but it really has been incredible to get to know you and learn more about your story. And it's really inspiring. I to be honest with you, it's been a few weeks now, and I still keep talking about it. I left that last conversation really amped. So
right on.
So we'll
you have a podcast also, right? So meez podcast, and you can you talk to chefs all around the world and talk about what their needs are and how you can help them. So it's good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So getmeez.com. That's get the meez.com. You can also look social media, of course, see what they're doing, and you can also follow Josh. What's your Instagram, Josh?
It's Josh L. Sharkey.
L. Sharkey.
Well, actually, there's. Is there
a better Instagram to follow?
I was going to say that is, well, and Get Meez has its own Instagram as well. But it's probably a lot of my kids and some stuff about the podcast, but.
All right. Well, forget that one then, unless you want to see Josh.
No, it's still, it's got a bunch of good Meez podcast stuff, but Get Meez is also the Instagram handle too.
Cool. Very nice. All right. So I guess that's a wrap. So I appreciate your time coming on Chef Radio, and we'll be in touch, and good luck with it. Continued success, and look forward to seeing the next generations of meez.
Thanks, Eli. Appreciate it, man.
All right. Have a great day. All right, everybody, that concludes this episode of the Chef Radio podcast. Thank you again for listening to these conversations. And if you like what you've heard, please share it with a friend who might be able to gain some insight, or you can post it on your social media and tag Chef Radio podcast. This will help others find us and will also help us grow the show, which is always appreciated. Also, if you're a Philadelphia local or you just want to know what's going on in the food scene here, please give our other podcast, Delicious City Philly, a listen. So until next time, keep pushing yourself to be better and be kind to each other.